fact that we know it's the longest psalm and it has something to do with the Hebrew alphabet. Who else is intimately familiar with the psalm? Seriously, Cam. Like, what's it about? Okay, and I think one of the reasons why that's a problem is because it's so long, we kind of read through it and then never really bother. And the fact is, this is not going to be exhaustive because I am going to do it. Honestly, we're going to get through it, the whole thing, this morning. And my purpose was to try to approach it in such a way that we could come away knowing what it was about. And remembering that relatively well. Psalm 23, oh sure, we've got, telling me this. Psalm 51, we understand. Psalm 22, okay, we've got these things in our heads. And what I'd like to do is have a character from Psalm 119, so when we are going down a little later, oh, what's a psalm we can do? Oh, Psalm 119 is about this, and we have it good. So I'm really going to do some groundwork. And to be honest, there's an extent to which that is always necessary. It's a cross that you know that already, right? There's 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. I don't know any of them. I still don't know, but I can rattle off to you. And so it's set off in 22 sections of 8 verses each. And each section, each sentence
additional. Every thought he's going to state has practically been stated already at this point. Who seek him with their whole heart, who also do no wrong, but walk in his ways. You have commanded your precepts to be kept diligently. Oh, that my ways may be steadfast in keeping your statutes. Then I shall not be put to shame. Having my eyes fixed on all your commandments, I will praise you with an upright heart when I learn your righteous rules. I will keep your statutes. Do not utterly forsake me. So here's the pattern here that I'm introducing to you. This is about God's, and I am going to keep this pattern the whole time. It is an important part of God's law. It is going to appear every time on every slide for me. The idea is that what can we get from this section that makes it clear some aspect of God's law and why it should be important, or how it is important, or how we practice it. That is there. So I noticed in this section that resolve was important. You see the words diligently, steadfast, and fixed in here, right? Let me see if I can find them again. Verse 4, diligently, steadfast, I'm losing it. 5, yep. And then fixed in verse 6. So resolve is an important part. I've made this decision. This is a conscious thing that I've decided I'm going to do, and I will stick to that. Later on, I mentioned resolution, and resolution and resolve are two different things. The biggest nuance I could grab in terms of the difference is that resolve has to do with a determination you have made that you will keep, and resolution is that you will keep this, and resolve is the fact that you are continuing to keep it. It's kind of like, well, the one is the decision, the other is fulfilling it, keeping it. So anyway, there are other things that you will notice in these 8 verses that are important about keeping God's law. I may or may not hit them later. I certainly will not hit all of them in the course of 22 sections. But when I was reading this, the takeaway I got is that resolve is an important part of keeping God's law. And there were New Testament verses, and I could spend time going there. But look at that, I'm already behind. So we will keep going unless there are comments about this section. How can a young man keep his way pure? By guarding it according to your word. With my whole heart I seek you. Let me not wander from your commandments. I have stored up your word in my heart that I might not sin against you. Oh, come on. I thought that would only happen when I was connected to the internet. It will. That I might not sin against you. Blessed are you, O Lord. Teach me your statutes. With my lips I declare all the rules of your mouth. In the way of your testimonies I delight as much as in all riches. I will meditate on your precepts and fix my eyes on your ways. I will delight in your statutes. I will not forget your word. Okay, so we can see here, look. Find the verse in here that doesn't, let's see. According to your word, your commandments, your word, statutes, rules, testimonies, precepts, statutes. Seriously, every verse mentions the law of God by word, by name, by concept. Even at a stretch, you will see your will, or I have done all that is right. Is another one you will see. And that one is one of the ones that they don't really count, but within context, it's there. I see here that caution is an important part of keeping God's law. The word guard there in verse 9. How can a young man keep his way pure? Guard. And this is different than, okay, so you've resolved in the last section I noticed, but at this point we're talking about guard. And the sense in my mind here is that, the verse I was going to bring up was the one that says, he who thinks he stands, take heed lest he fall. 1 Corinthians 10, 12. That's the concept. That's the concept, that we need to be aware of the fact that the moment we become ambitious or confident in our salvation, we need to be aware that we're setting ourselves up for trouble. I was looking for the verse that said, the harder they come, the harder they fall, but that one wasn't in there quite like that. So anyway, I'm going to continue. 17. Deal bountifully with your servant, that I may live and keep your word. Open my eyes, that I may behold wondrous things out of your law. I am a sojourner on the earth. Hide not your commandment from me. My soul is consumed with longing for your rules at all times. By the way, this hide not your commandment from me right there. This is one of the things I've talked about before as being one of the things that we fail to appreciate about the particular I'll just say it from the worldview. The religion we have chosen has a God that actually wants us to know what we're supposed to do for him. And I'm not putting all religions on an equal playing field here, but just from a very humanistic perspective. Okay, there's some people who worship things or entities that they think exist, and that they don't, but that's not my point. They literally have no idea what that thing wants from them at all. You know, John and I got the biggest kick probably a good 10 years ago now out of a class we were in where they were discussing other religions and Hinduism and Buddhism, and there was worksheets that we were going through, and one of them, I don't remember what the religion was exactly, but the people are just absolutely desperate to figure out what their God wants for worship, and so they take their idol and slap sandalwood paste on this thing's forehead with the hope that that's what he wants. You know, and they don't really know that. It's not been recorded anywhere. Their God did not tell them to do that. They're just sort of guessing, you know, and thank God that he has taken the time to tell us what he wants from us. My soul is consumed with longing for your rules at all times. You rebuke the insolent, accursed ones who wander from your commandments. Take away from me scorn and contempt, for I have kept your testimony. Even though princes sit plotting against me, your servant will meditate on your statutes. Your testimonies are my delight. They are my counselors. I see here that submission is an important part of keeping God's law. Open my eyes, I am consumed. Okay, it takes an attitude of being willing to let your own willpower take the back seat here. To have God put his hand on your head and turn it this way, you know, and to let whatever he has for you become to consume you. I mean, if that's what he's using there, it's a fair one to use. Consume you, to have that much attention to what it is that God wants for you, that you allow yourself to bend to the direction he has for you. And that's what I see from this section. And there is more things. This verse here, they are my counselors, your testimonies are my counselors. You know, that's a pretty strong verse. There's a whole sermon wrapped up in that. And look at that. There it goes. Got to keep moving. My soul clings to the dust. Give me life according to your word. When I told of my ways, you answered me. Teach me your statutes. Make me understand the way of your precepts, and I will meditate on your wondrous works. My soul melts away for sorrow. Strengthen me according to your word. I'm so sorry, guys. This just started yesterday. So will it... No, how annoying is that? My soul melts away from sorrow. Strengthen me according to your word. Put false ways far from me and graciously teach me your law. I have chosen the way of faithfulness. I set your rules before me. I cling to your testimonies, O Lord. Let me not be put to shame. I will run in the way of your commandments when you enlarge my heart. And again, it's just amazing me to notice here every single verse. Your works, your word, your law, the way of faithfulness, your rules. You know, every single verse, 176. I mean, he sort of repeats himself in concept, but he never has the same. No verse is one for one the same. It's just kind of amazing to me. Honesty about our own sin is an important part of keeping God's law, right? I told you my ways, put false ways from me. Verse 29, 26 verse. I told him my ways, you answered me, teach you your statutes. This is an important and complex realization to have here. And I like the fact that the psalmist mentions both of these things in the same section, because I told you of my ways. I'm a sinner, is what's going on here. But then the solution is immediately thereafter, right? And my soul melts away for sorrow. Well, that doesn't come from being righteous, right? Strengthen me how? According to your word. So this psalm is about God's law. And the question is, how do we keep the law? And if I had time, it's amazing to see this is a different law than the one we're under now, but the concepts still apply. And that's why I was really enjoying finding some of the New Testament stuff for it. But anyway, put false ways from me. You know, a recognition of sin, because it is necessary to recognize the sin if you're going to recognize the solution. Go ahead, Adam.
In my concordance, it's actually something that I found interesting. The word law, testimonies, way, precepts, status, commandments, judgments, and word all appear against a number of times that the word law appears in Psalms 19 25 times, testimonies 22, way 11, precepts 21, statutes 21 times, commandments 22, judgments 23, and the word word is 39 times.
See, when you add those up, I saw that as well. When you add those up, supposedly there's 2 verses missing.
It's 100, what was it, 158?
158?
Is what I got.
The list I went through got up to 174. And there's 176 verses. And so mathematically, supposedly there's 2 in there. And again, I know which ones they are. Keep your eyes open. If you think you see them, raise your hand. If you don't get them, I will back up after we pass them and say, here's one of the ones. What do you guys think? But yeah, it's about the law. It's about the law. 33 through 40. Teach me, O Lord, the way of your statutes, and I will keep it to the end. Give me understanding that I may keep your law and observe it with my whole heart. Lead me in the path of your commandments, for I delight in it. Incline my heart to your testimony and not to selfish gain. Turn my eyes from looking at worthless things and give me life in your ways. Confirm to your servant your promise that you may be feared. Turn away the reproach that I dread, for your rules are good. Behold, I long for your precepts. In righteousness, give me life. I meant to pull up a note here. I'm not checking my... Hang on a second. Drafts. Okay. Behold, I long for your precepts and righteousness, give me life. Focus is an important part of keeping God's law. Whole heart, turn. Okay, I mentioned before submission, the idea that God is going to do this for you. God does not do everything for you. And one of the things he does not do is insist. He doesn't make this an automatic process. And the idea being that it is our own will that determines whether or not we're going to put the effort into paying attention to what he has for us or not. So when I see whole heart here, and it shows up numerous times, I just brought it up for this section because it does show up. This idea of turning your will over to God, yes, but the will that you do have applying the correct direction, that takes focus, that takes determination, and that's an important part of keeping God's law. Wow, that's my favorite Hebrew letter, wow. Let your steadfast love come to me, O Lord, your salvation according to your promise. Then shall I have an answer for him who taunts me, for I trust in your word. And take not the word of truth utterly out of my mouth, for my hope is in your rules. I wish there was a way I knew how to stop this.
This might be online. If you've ever been online, Dad's internet, it's sitting back there.
Oh, that's exactly what's going on. Okay, hang on.
Start.
No, I've got a function key. You suppose I did it? We'll see. I will keep your law continually forever and ever. I shall walk in a white place, for I have sought your precepts. I will also speak of your testimonies before kings, and shall not be put to shame. For I find my delight in your commandments, which I love. I will lift up my hands toward your commandments, which I love, and I will meditate on your statutes. Okay, so we're 50 verses or so in. People are seeing the pattern I'm making right here. I'm just trying to grab snapshots of each section out for the sake of getting a good sense of what this psalm is about. Is there something in here that you think is unique? You want to guess what I'm going for? I picked this one. I don't know why. What's in the, okay, it's about the law, and I'm saying resolve is an important part, and submission is an important part, and you name it. What do you think that I found unique in here? This is not guess George's brain. This is an exercise to try to determine whether or not. Okay, here we go. I'll ask you again. Courage is an important part of keeping God's law. Speak before kings. Okay, that's something that hasn't been mentioned yet. It just so happens, okay? And it only gets mentioned one other time throughout the whole psalm. This idea of that we have to take this, and sometimes in situations that we're very uncomfortable with. Okay, but that is a commanded part of the law we're under more than it was the old law. Okay, evangelism was not a part of who the Israelites were, right? They sort of obliterated the people around them. They didn't try to pull them back in. I'm sorry. Again, brevity here. Might be hurting me on anything. Courage is an important part of keeping God's law. Okay, and we do see it in the Old Testament. Daniel, I mean, name the person, a lot of people in the Old Testament were that way. In this particular instance, he's talking about having testimony before the high and mighty here, and that takes courage. Remember your word for your servant, in which you have made me hope. This is my comfort and my affliction, that your promises give me life. The insolent utterly deride me, but I do not turn away from your law. When I think of your rules from of old, I take comfort, O Lord. Hot indignation seizes me because of the wicked who forsake your law. Your statutes have been my songs in the house of my sojourning. I remember your name in the night, O Lord, and keep your law. This blessing has fallen to me, that I have kept your precepts. So here's my resolution. Resolution is an important part of keeping God's law. Verse 51 there, the insolent utterly deride me, but I do not turn away. And then hot indignation in verse 53. So the reason resolution came up for me here is that I have resolved to do this thing. That was my first section. I've resolved to do this. And it takes that. I'm going to do this. But this is more the, I am doing it. I am facing issues. I'm going to do it anyway. It's kind of the reaffirmation during the process. That's the difference between the two words there, although they are similar. 57 through 64. The Lord is my portion. I promise to keep your word. I entreat your favor with all my heart. Be gracious to me according to your promise. When I think on my ways, I turn my feet to your testimony. I hasten and do not delay to keep your commandments. So one I did not get in there is expediency. The greatest possible dispatch is an important part of keeping God's law. I hasten and do not delay to keep your commandments. Though the cords of the wicked ensnare me, I do not forget your law. At midnight I rise to praise you because of your righteous rules. I am a companion of all who fear you, of those who keep your precepts. The earth, O Lord, is full of your steadfast love. Teach your statutes. Those of you who know George knows he likes his sleep. Disregard for personal inconvenience is an important part of keeping God's law. Okay? At midnight I rise. What? And this is just a simple application of the concept that we need to be prepared for the fact that things will not always go the way we like them. Okay, the Tweedies drive 40 minutes. And other people try. John and Barbara, they get on a boat and they get their car. You know, I mean, it's like, there's a lot of personal inconvenience according to the way we live in the world. Paul talks about this all the time, and he started mentioning things that weren't a matter of personal. I mean, shipwrecks. I don't put that on my that was personally inconvenient for me list, but he put it on his. I should be willing to get up at midnight. You have dealt well with your servant, O Lord, according to your word. Teach me good judgment and knowledge, for I believe in your commandments. Before I was afflicted, I went astray, but now I keep your word. You are good and do good. Teach me your statutes. The insolent smear me with lies, but with my whole heart. Well, I am not connected. I don't know what's going on there. I'm going to have to work on that. The insolent smear me with lies, but with my whole heart I keep your precepts. So here's the resolution again, by the way. I could have gone to this section and said, resolution. But I did it in the last one, just because. Their heart is unfeeling like fat, but I delight in your law. It is good for me that I was afflicted, that I might learn your statutes. The law of your mouth is better to me than thousands of gold and silver pieces. I forgot to put it up here, but the thing I got about this is that adipose has no Pisidian corpuscles. Is corpuscles the right word? Corpuscles? Okay. That's verse 70. Their heart is unfeeling like fat, but I delight in your law. So adipose is fat tissue and nerve endings. Yeah, so anyway, seriously, I wanted to mention that for a minute because the point of this is that it's poetry. Okay, and if we were to read this, as literally, as premillennialists read Revelation, we would read this and go, "Smear about my own view. The heart is unfeeling fat. Oh, that must mean where is it? Adipose has no Pisidian corpuscles." Because clearly it's dealing with something medical, because fat is a body part. Okay, and that's how we get 1,000-year reigns, and the dragon fell to earth, yet it was bigger than the universe. And this weird stuff, the lion will lie down with the lamb. Are we so small as to not understand poetry and realize that it's talking about something other than a physical lion and a physical lamb? Is that so hard? Because we wouldn't come here and be so ridiculous, would we? It's poetry. Prophecy can be poetry too. So anyway, but actually, appreciation for rebuke is also an important part of keeping God's law. It is good that I was afflicted. Many of you know that there's the passage in Jeremiah that is absolutely one of my favorites, Lamentations, written by Jeremiah, that talks about the same thing, the wormwood and the gall. It is good that I was afflicted while in my youth. Okay, same thing going on here. Your hands have made and fashioned me. Give me an understanding that I may learn your commandments. Those who fear you shall see me and rejoice, because I have hoped in your word. I know, O Lord, that your rules are righteous, and that in faithfulness you have afflicted me. Let your steadfast love comfort me according to your promise to your servant. Let your mercy come to me that I may live, for your law is my delight. Let the insolent be put to shame, because they have wronged me with falsehood. As for me, I will meditate on your precepts. Let those who fear you turn to me, that they may know your testimonies. Let my heart be blameless in your statutes, that I may not be put to shame. Remembering he created us is an important part of keeping God's law. Your hands have made me, made and fashioned me. And the impact that realization has on how you behave around God is pretty significant. It's a big one, like recognizing your sin. It is courage, personality trait, something you practice. I'm not saying it's not important, but these are things that have major influence, major, I don't know, the path that it opens up in terms of a humbling experience is a pretty big one here. This is not a once and done thing. You're constantly learning things that are ramifications as a result of believing this. This is a pretty long-lasting thing to understand. Remembering he created us is an important part of keeping God's law. My soul longs for your salvation. I hope in your word. My eyes long for your promise. I ask, when will you comfort me? For I have become like a wineskin in the smoke, yet I have not forgotten your statutes. How long must your servant endure? When will you judge those who persecute me? The insolent have dug pitfalls for me. They do not live according to your law. All your commandments are sure. They persecute me with falsehood. Help me. They have almost made an end of me on earth, but I have not forsaken your precepts. In your steadfast love, give me life, that I may keep the testimonies of your mouth. Faith in God's power is an important part of keeping God's law. All your commandments are pure.
Verse 84, one of them.
You know what I was gonna say?
How long must your servant endure? When will you judge those who persecute me? This is not one of the ones that they had on their list. I wondered about this as well. And the reason is because the reference to judgment. So that's why it wouldn't have shown up on his list. The list I was looking at did not put it on there. I knew this would happen because, who's to say? But it is interesting. You're absolutely right that this verse is different than all the others. It just is. It doesn't have those words. Yeah, it doesn't have those words.
A lot of the words that you're actually discussing about, like, y'all's translation is completely different than the translation that I had.
I'm trying to think I'm using the ESV here.
Oh, I'm actually using the New King James.
Okay.
The translation is a lot different.
Okay. Sorry. It does confuse me when I get in there. One of the things interesting about these words, like principle and law and statute and all that, is that very frequently it ends up being a nuance the translator ends up determining themselves. This is talking about a commandment of some kind. Now we're talking about it in the legalistic sense, or from the perspective of the person who gave it, or from the perspective of the person who's receiving it, or from the perspective of the person who's acting it out right then. They're really, there's a lot of give and take in there that they work with. I do need to keep moving. Forever, O Lord, your word is firmly fixed in the heavens. Your faithfulness endures to all generations. You have established the earth, and it stands fast. By the way, we're halfway. Yeah, we're halfway. By your appointment, they stand this day. All things are your servants. If your law had not been my delight, I would have perished in my affliction. I will never forget your precepts, for by them you have given me life. I am yours, you saved me, for I have sought your precepts. The wicked lie and wait to destroy me, but I consider your testimonies. I have seen a limit to all perfection, but your commandment is exceedingly broad. Oops. Well, I shouldn't have had mem in there yet. Oh, how I love your laws, my meditation all the day. So I accidentally stuck verse 7. Hopefully, or 97. Hopefully I've got it included in the next one. Long-term perspective is an important part of keeping God's law. Forever, endure, never forget. I made a comment about this on Sunday or Thursday last, about the fact that it must have been on a Thursday. Were you doing class? Maybe. Where the point God's blessings seem to be the non-tangible nouns.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. This is talking. Okay, what does God promise to us as Christians? He promises salvation and little else. I said the spot closest to the front door at Walmart is not one of those little perks he guaranteed to throw in there for a Christian. When God, well, the verse I'm looking for is, I'll not see the saints forsaken or the righteous begging bread. Okay, so he says that, and we go, okay, here I am a Christian, and I'll never want again. Well, it's interesting to find out that we do want, and it's our responsibility to fulfill that role, such as you did to the least of these, so you did to me. So when God says I'm going to do that, it's because we have a responsibility to fulfill to each other. But anyway, the point is that if you think the benefits of being a Christian are something that happened within a 24-hour period only, and they, I mean, we're encouraged here, and those that are not the saints aren't receiving this encouragement. So there's a benefit there. I'm not denying that. But the fact is that understanding that God's promises are something that have to do with eternity and not the temporal things is an important part of keeping God's law. It's motivation, certainly. Okay, so Mem said, "Oh, how I love your law. It is my meditation all the day. Your commandment makes me wiser than my enemies, for it is ever with me. I have more understanding than my teachers, for your testimonies are my meditation. I understand more than the aged, for I keep your precepts. I hold back my feet from every evil way in order to keep your word. I do not turn aside from your rules, for you have taught me. How sweet are your words to my taste, sweeter than honey to my mouth. Through your precepts I get understanding, therefore I hate every false way." Understanding God's law is an important part of keeping God's law. I mean, but really, you know, if you think that's too obvious, then remember the people that go, "Oh, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual." Is that what they say? You got to understand God's law. Wise, understanding, you taught me. If there was something about God, it needed to be learned. That's just the way it is. It's an obvious statement. I don't know what else to really add to that. But, I mean, he made the point here. Your word is a lamp to my feet and light to my path. I have sworn an oath and confirmed it to keep your righteous rules. I'm severely afflicted. Give me life, O Lord, according to your word. Again, this is the third dimension, but every verse, precept, law, rule, statute, commandment. Accept my free will offering of praise, O Lord, and teach me your rules. I hold my life in my hand continually, but I do not forget your law. The wicked have laid a snare for me, but I do not stray from your precepts. Your testimonies are my heritage forever. They are the joy of my heart. Again, long term, heritage forever. Heritage is I mean, we don't even use that word in our society really. It's not that it's become antiquated, but it's that we don't even bother thinking about the concept. It's not important to us. I incline my heart to perform your statutes forever to the end. Integrity is an important part of keeping God's law. Swore an oath. Okay, I agree to do these things. It makes me think of Job making a covenant with his eyes. Okay, that's the resolve, that's the resolution. But the fact is that for you to be able to stand before God, you have to have kept that. If you have made that commitment, you need to take it seriously. And to be able to stand before the wicked lay a snare before me, but I do not stray. Okay, a person who can say that has integrity. It's an important part of keeping God's law. I hate that. This is one of my favorites. I hate the double-minded, but I love your law. You are my hiding place and my shield. I hope in your word. Depart from me, you evildoers, that I may keep the commandments of my God. Uphold me according to your promise, that I may live, and let me not be put to shame in my hope. Hold me up, that I may be safe and have regard for your statutes continually. You spurn all who go astray from your statutes, for their cunning is in vain. All the wicked of the earth you discard like dross. Therefore I love your testimonies. My flesh trembles in fear of you, and I am afraid of your judgments. This section is a little bit different in the sense that it seems to be focusing more on sinful people. Understanding the nature of evil is an important part of keeping God's law. Wise as serpents, gentle as doves. Okay, know your enemy. Keep your friends close, your enemies closer, right? We have to have a good understanding of who the enemy is to know how to avoid them. Double-minded, like dross, cunning. You spurn all who go astray. You know, these are identifiers of who the bad guys are. Okay, and in a sense of naivete, we can end up falling away because, hey, I'm good, right? We have that confidence. You know, we've shown a little courage or whatever. But then I can handle this because, well, it's not really sin, and I don't see the warning signs, and I haven't crossed the line, and whoops, there we go. So understanding the nature of evil is an important part of keeping God's law. I have done what is just and right. Do not leave me to my oppressors. Give your servant a pledge of good. Do not let the insolent press me. My eyes long for your salvation and for the fulfillment of your righteous promise. Deal with your servant according to your steadfast love and teach me your statutes. I am your servant, give me understanding that I may know your testimonies. It is time for the Lord to act, for your law has been broken. Therefore I love your commandment above gold, above fine gold. Therefore I consider all your precepts to be right. I hate every false way. Do you have your hand up here?
Nope.
Okay. Placing value on God's law is an important part of keeping God's law. The kingdom of God is like a pearl of great price. Placing value on God's law is an important part of keeping God's law. He called it gold. 129 through 136. But wait.
122.
122.
Yeah. But you have pledge there.
A pledge of good. I know.
Yeah,
And I looked at that written out.
Pledge of
Come
good.
on. It doesn't have the word statute, but a pledge of good is just a poetic term because you said statute
Right.
36 times, whatever it is, you know. So that is one of the spots that the scholarly list that I was looking at said that out of 176 verses, this is one instance where the law of God is not mentioned. Now, I see pledge of good and think, okay, it's mentioned. But anyway, so that's the first one. Your testimonies are wonderful, therefore my soul keeps them. The unfolding of your words gives light, it imparts understanding to the simple. I open my mouth and pant because I long for your commandments. Turn to me and be gracious to me, as is your way with those who love your name. Keep steady my steps according to your promise, and let no iniquity get dominion over me. I like that line. It's kind of clumsy. No, you know, let no iniquity get dominion over. I don't know. It just doesn't really roll or whatever. But it feels very heartfelt. Redeem me from man's oppression, that I may keep your precepts. Make your face shine upon your servant. Teach me your statutes. My eyes shed streams of tears because people do not keep your law. Love of your enemy is an important part of keeping God's law. Streams of tears, and this is a toughie too. This is like understanding that God is your creator. It's one of those that just has massive impact on the way you behave. It really, really does. And we I think are very good at grasping the fact that we were created by God. I think we almost pride ourselves on that. You know, we have the knowledge there and all that. And I'm not saying we don't love our enemy, but if there was one of those two that we needed to work on, the love of your enemy would be the one. I think. I mean, God created us as very intellectual. We continue to find evidence for that. We are fascinated by that. We do studies on that. It's one of the things I'm going to talk about when I preach coming up here soon. Love your enemy has a massive impact on the way you behave, and it is a very important part of keeping God's law. Any comments on this section? It's 132. 132 is the second one. Turn to me and be gracious to me, as is your way with all those who love your name. I guess I can see a little bit more in this one.
I don't know, as is your way, so what's it speaking of?
I know. That's what I said too. As is your way is referring to God's law, right? So,
Or your name.
the Hebrew scholars and the great thinkers and all that, if there were two verses, it was 122 and 132 that they said did not include a reference to God's law. I say they do, which means, according to George, every single verse in this psalm refers to every single verse. That just really boggles my mind. It's amazing. Righteous are you, O Lord, and right are your rules. You have appointed your testimonies in righteousness and in all faithfulness. My zeal consumes me because my foes forget your word. Your promise is well tried, and your servant loves it. Isn't that great? Your promise is well tried, and your servant loves it. I mean, that's one that people should be sticking on their wall, right? You know, you see the elaborate, as for me and for my house, we will serve the Lord, or live, laugh, love, and I'm still not even sure how that makes sense without any additional context. But your promise is well tried, and your servant loves it. I think that's a doorpost kind of verse. I'm small and despised, yet I do not forget your precepts. Your righteousness is righteous forever, and your law is true. Trouble and anguish have found me out. Your commandments are my delight. But wait a minute. I thought our understanding was that once you become a Christian, your problems go away. Right? No, God keeps his promises. Remember what he has actually promised. Your testimonies are righteous forever. Give me understanding that I may live. Trusting God's plan is an important part of keeping God's law. He has zealous for it. Okay, you have to have a lot of trust in something to be zealous about it. If I get on Facebook and I find myself being very zealous about the abortion issue. This is wrong, and I will say that as many times as anybody's willing to say otherwise. Okay, and if I can only do that because I really, really, really believe that I'm right about this one. And there's the other. He recognizes the truth in God's law, and it's interesting to me here. I am small and despised, yet I do not forget your precepts. Okay, here's the position I am in, God, and all I can do is rely on you in this. And we see examples of people doing that everywhere in the Old and New Testament. Quaff. With my whole heart I cry, answer me, O Lord. I will keep your statutes. I will call to you, save me, that I may observe your testimonies. That's an interesting thought here. He's suggesting that I observe your testimonies. That gets me into trouble. He doesn't say it here, but he said it other places. Because I've kept your testimonies, you can save me so that I can continue to keep your testimonies. When we are saved and we are immersed, okay, and come back up, the understanding is that our appreciation for his preservation of us should instill in us a sense of we will continue to do the right thing. Okay, and this is a major, major problem, and I've mentioned this before. When the Israelites sinned, why did they sin? It wasn't because things stank, it's because things were good. Right? And there's been points in my life where I just think, oh boy, this could be a challenge to remember that God has done these wonderful things for me and to not fall away. When the church got back together 5.5 years ago, I said to Lee, I remember I was painting this wall with him right here, and I said to him, it just seems like it's been so hard, and now we're going to be doubling in size, and I just hope we don't all get kind of religious pansies because we've got so much support now. I mean, that was my fear, and that was a big deal to me. I was, how old was I, 19, 17, 18? I was somewhere in there, and that was a huge deal to me. I mean, splitting up was a big deal, getting back together, huge deal. And it's right up there with getting married and having children for me. It's like, major blessing just got thrown in my lap, some cases literally, okay, and it was like, how am I going to respond in such ways not to forget all the things I'm supposed to be doing for God because my cup overflows, and the danger comes to forgetting about God when things are good, because when things are bad, that's when we remember him. Oh boy, did I get all the way to 52? I don't remember. No, okay. I'll keep it. I call to you, save me, that I may observe your testimonies. I rise before dawn and cry for help. I hope in your words. My eyes are awake before the watches of the night, that I may meditate on your promise. Hear my voice according to your steadfast love, O Lord. According to your justice, give me life. They draw near who persecute me with evil purpose. They are far from your law. But you are near, O Lord, and your commandments are true. Long have I known from your testimonies that you have founded them forever. And again here, we see forever, we see truth. These are points I brought up before. My purpose is to try to remember the thrust of the psalm, the lesson there to learn, and it is about keeping God's law. Repetition and regularity are part of keeping God's law. Before dawn and the watches of the night, this is a consistent thing he does. When he calls to God, when he's praying, when he's praising, okay? These are things he recognizes should be done all the time. Before the dawn and the watches of the night, that's kind of, right? It's something that's supposed to be done regularly, all the time, pray without ceasing. We're very familiar with that. Look at my affliction and deliver me, for I do not forget your law. Plead my cause and redeem me. Give me life according to your promise. Redeem. I think that's the first time. I don't remember if I had decided that or not. I think I forgot to go back and double check or triple check. But I think this is the first time that redeem shows up like that. We're getting towards the end here.
It talks about saving it.
Yeah, it talks about it, and the redemption though is more than that. Saving is, oh, I've done this for you. Redemption is, oh, I've traded something else. You know what I mean? I think this is the first time redeem showed up quite like this. Give me life according to your promise. Salvation is far from the wicked, for they do not seek your statutes. Salvation and your law tied hand in hand. We have seen that before, but not the same verse. Great is your mercy, O Lord. Give me life according to your rules. Many are my persecutors and adversaries, but I do not swerve from your testimonies. Look at the faithless with disgust, because they do not keep your commands. Consider how I love your precepts. Give me life according to your steadfast love. The sum of your word is truth, and every one of your righteous rules endures forever. Knowing what to pray for is an important part of keeping God's law. And this goes hand in hand with the thing I was saying about long-term perspective, what God actually promises us compared to what we expect. According to your rules, where did it go? Verse 156, great is your mercy, O Lord, give me life according to your rules. That is a major asterisk stuck on what he's asking for. I want life. Now, what does that entail? Well, God, you decide. You decide what that entails. And having that kind of faith and understanding is really a very important part of understanding what God's nature is and what he wants from us. Important part of keeping God's law. This next one's also one of my favorites. Princes persecute me without cause, but my heart stands in awe of your words. I rejoice at your word like one who finds great spoil. I hate and abhor falsehood, but I love your law. 7 times a day I praise you for your righteous rules. Great peace have those who love your law. Nothing can make them stumble. I hope for your salvation, O Lord, and I do your commandments. My soul keeps your testimonies. I love them exceedingly. I keep your precepts and testimonies, for all my ways are before you. Repetition and regularity are an important part of keeping God's law. And this is the only one I'm going, I was sitting here working on it down to my sections, and I don't know how long I've been working on it. And I got this one, and I'm like, man, this seems like a strong one. I thought, wait, the point is repetition and regularity. It's okay that it shows up twice, right? That's the point to be had here. 7 times a day. 7 times a day. All right, we are just about at the end. Let my cry come before you, O Lord. Give me understanding according to your word. Let my plea come before you. Deliver me according to your word. My lips will pour forth praise, for you teach me your statutes. And again, every verse mentioning the law of God. If you get nothing else, this is about the law of God, the law of God, the law of God. 176 times the law of God. Teach me your statutes. My tongue will sing of your word, for all your commandments are right. It almost makes you wonder if it would have been more poetic to every time we see the word commandment, statute, precept, to just say the law of God. Because then you couldn't miss it, right? At least for us, you would think. My tongue will sing of your word, for your commandments are right. Let your hand be ready to help me, for I have chosen your precepts. I long for your salvation, O Lord, and your law is my delight. Let my soul live and praise you. Let your rules help me. I have gone astray like a lost sheep. Seek your servant, for I do not forget your commandments. Giving honor and praise is an important part of keeping God's law. Pour forth praise and sing. So I had 21 things, because I repeated myself. 21 things. Resolve, an important part of keeping God's law. Caution, submission, honesty about our own sin. Huge. That's a big, big deal. Focus. We need to be determined to keep this up. Courage. We will find ourselves in situations where we won't want to have to deal with the fact that we are obeying God's law. That steadfastness, remaining resolute. In this particular section, he was dealing with people who were beating him up about it. Okay, and he was having to stick to his guns. He 7 times a day, watches of the night, gets up at midnight in the early hours of dawn. All those things were mentioned. He said, Lord, you have rebuked me, and I needed it. That's really important, to be able to bow your head and accept that when you have done the wrong thing. Remembering he created us. Why would I bother listening to God to begin with? Well, and we're gone. We're gone. I'll be talking about that. I think it's in 1 week that I do the sermon. And I've discovered this scientific enigma thing that happened back in 2004. I don't want to give stuff away, but it's like the power of the universe around us. It's just speechless. It's amazing, and then the fact that God can do things that we would be gone, we wouldn't even know it. We would have no clue that it ever even happened. There wouldn't even be pain; it'd just be gone. Pain until judgment, right? You have faith in His power. God, I know you can do this because if you can create me, what can't you do? You need to have that long-term perspective. God, I wanted things to turn out this way, and they did not. But I know what you actually promised me is something else. Familiarity with His law. I said earlier, understanding God's law, familiarity with His law. Okay, so God, now that I know that you created me, I have faith that you can do things, but what is it exactly that you want me to do? You need to have integrity. So now that I know what you want me to do, Lord, I stand before you believing I have done it. That's important. We need to be, that's kind of the point, right? We need to be able to say that we've done that. You understand the nature of evil. Why can I stand before you to have done this? Because I recognize this is sin, and I stayed away from it. And he places value on his law. This thing is important to me. I will give up anything that, I will give up my personal convenience to obey your law. You need to love your enemy. I mean, that's personal inconvenience if anything was, right? You need to trust in his plan. Okay, you have taken away these things from me. I am suffering, but you know what? You know what you're doing. That's me really I'm cheating here. Trust in his plan, long-term perspective. Same thing. Repetition and regularity, right? Over and over and over again. We are people who learn this way. This is how we understand things. It needs to be said over and over and over again. And so right before here I get to the end, I did the last two, but just think about this for a minute. Look at what was in this psalm. And what did I know about the psalm before I started studying? 176 verses, divided into 22 sections, 8 verses apiece. Okay, it was acrostic, right? I mean, look what is here. And I did not finish the 7 slides or whatever it was that 1 Corinthians 10, 1 Corinthians 8, 1 Corinthians 7, 1 Corinthians 11. Yeah, I mean, it's all there. It's all there. You can read this and get a really good summation as to how we're supposed to behave in our relationship with God. And that's great stuff. And the poor psalm gets missed, and somewhat rightfully so, because I was down for 4 weeks of it. And I decided to do it this way instead. It's just an awful lot. But the thing you need to remember is God's law for us is wonderful. We need to know what to pray for. We need to give him honor and praise. All these things are important parts of keeping God's law. Sometimes more applicable to us today than it was to the psalmist then, in some senses. Okay, so in some ways it's almost prophetic in its understanding of how the relationship with God works at all. No matter what the law is, how we fulfill what he desires of us was the same then, and it's the same now. That's an enormous point on its own. So, when you're sitting there going, Psalm 119, I know, like I said, Psalm 23, Psalm 51, okay, we know these things. Psalm 119, God's law. It's about how to keep God's law. It's about the characteristics and the habits of a person who knows how to keep God's law. That's what Psalm 119 is. Are there any questions? We have 2 minutes before 11. All right, well, we will take a break. I don't know how long it will last, but somebody will flicker the lights after we've had a chance to get up and use the restroom and stretch our legs, and then we'll begin again. Thank you so much for your attention.